You lock the door. You turn away. 3 steps later, your hand is already reaching back toward the handle. You just checked it. You know you checked it. And yet some part of you needs to check it again. You might call this anxiety. You might call it a bad habit. But the real answer is far stranger than either of those words suggests. What you're experiencing is a verification system that evolved to keep you alive in a world where a single unlocked entrance could mean the end of your bloodline. It doesn't know about deadbolts. It doesn't know about modern locks engineered by professionals. It only knows one ancient rule. An unsecured boundary is a hole through which death can enter while you sleep. To understand why this loop feels so unbreakable, you have to understand what a boundary actually meant for most of human history. For roughly 200,000 years, the line between you and the outside world was not a steel deadbolt. It was a thin wall of branches, animal hide, or rock, and behind that thin wall was everything that wanted to eat you. Archaeologist Polly Wiesner, who has spent decades studying hunter-gatherer sleep and shelter behavior among the Juhwanzi people of the Kalahari, found that fire and shelter boundaries were treated as constant works in progress, checked, rebuilt, and reinforced throughout the night by whoever happened to be awake. This wasn't paranoia, it was maintenance. A gap in a fence line, a fire that burned too low, an entrance left unwatched. These were not abstract risks. They were specific, nameable threats with teeth and claws. So your ancestors developed something psychologists now call a checking behavior, a recurring mental and physical loop built around verifying that protective boundaries remain intact. Here's the part that should surprise you. The checking itself was never really about the door or the fence or the fire. It was about closing a loop of uncertainty that your brain treats as dangerous even when the actual danger has been removed for thousands of years. Psychologist Jeffrey Schwartz, who has spent his career studying the neuroscience of repetitive checking behaviors, found that this loop runs primarily through a brain circuit connecting the orbital frontal cortex, a region involved in detecting that something feels wrong, and the caudate nucleus, which is involved in shifting attention away from a completed task. In people for whom this circuit fires efficiently, checking the lock once produces a clean, satisfying sense of completion. The brain says, handled, and moves on. But the circuit doesn't always shut off cleanly. And here's the strange part. It doesn't need to be broken to misfire. It just needs to be running an ancient threat protocol that was never designed for modern locks, modern walls, modern security systems that work exactly as advertised every single time. Your ancestors lived in an environment where checking was rewarded constantly. The fence that held was the fence that mattered. The fire that stayed lit saved lives. Vigilance had a near-perfect track record of paying off because the threats were real, frequent, and proportional to the checking behavior they triggered. Now think about your door. Your modern lock almost never fails. The mechanism that secures your home tonight is engineered to industrial tolerances, tested, mass-produced, reliable in a way nothing in the ancestral environment ever was. And yet, the part of your brain assigned to verify boundary security has no updated baseline for that reliability. It still calibrates risk the way it always has, by feeling, not by manufacturing specifications. This is where researcher Paul Tsiolkovsky, who has spent decades studying the psychology of intrusive thoughts and compulsive checking, found something almost paradoxical. The more you check something, the less confident you actually become that you checked it correctly. Repeated checking doesn't build certainty. It erodes memory of the original action, replacing a clear, confident memory of locking the door with a blurry, anxious one, because each subsequent check overwrites the last, leaving you less sure, not more, that the door is secure. In other words, the behavior designed to create certainty is, past a certain point, the thing actively destroying it. This explains something almost everyone has felt. You lock the door, walk to the car, and the specific vivid memory of turning the key has already started to dissolve into a vague, generic memory of locking doors in general, every door you've ever locked, blurring together into one indistinct motion. Your brain isn't malfunctioning when this happens. It's doing exactly what brains do with repetitive low-stakes motor actions. It stops encoding them in detail because detailed encoding is expensive, and the ancestral version of this action almost never needed a vivid memory. It needed a completed action and a felt sense of safety. The mismatch is that your modern environment requires you to remember a discrete, specific moment, while your brain is built to register a general pattern of security maintenance. So what does your nervous system do when it can't access a clear memory of the specific act? It defaults to the oldest, simplest tool available. Go check again. Researcher Karen Roloffs, who has studied freeze, fight, and checking responses in anxiety states, has noted that checking behavior shares a neurological lineage with vigilance behaviors seen across many social mammals. Behaviors that increase under uncertainty and decrease only when an organism receives clear, embodied feedback that a threat has been resolved. The trouble is that turning a key and hearing a click is a remarkably thin form of feedback for a brain that evolved to want something closer to watching a fire burn steadily for hours, or hearing a fence hold against repeated testing. A single click doesn't feel like enough evidence, so the loop asks for more. This is why anxiety researchers have found that people experiencing heightened stress, whether from work, sleep deprivation, or unrelated life pressure, report a measurable increase in checking behaviors completely unrelated to the actual source of that stress. Your threat detection system, once activated by anything, starts scanning every available boundary for confirmation that the world is secure. The door becomes a stand-in for everything else that feels uncertain. There's something almost moving in this. Once you see it clearly, the part of you that walks back to check the lock a second time isn't broken. It's running the most reliable survival program your species ever developed, deployed onto a target that no longer requires it. Your ancestors who checked the fence line obsessively were not anxious. They were alive, and they stayed that way specifically because checking worked. The challenge now is that the world changed faster than the program inside you. Modern locks succeed silently and constantly, offering none of the dramatic, embodied confirmation your nervous system evolved to crave. A held fence creaked. A burning fire crackled and glowed. A modern deadbolt simply clicks and disappears from your senses entirely, leaving the ancient verification circuit with almost nothing to hold on to. So the next time you find yourself walking back to check a door you already locked, you are not weak, and you are not failing at adulthood. You are a 200,000-year-old security system installed in a body that now lives behind walls more reliable than any your ancestors ever built, still doing the only job it has ever known how to do. You lock the door, you turn away, and somewhere behind your conscious thought, an ancient sentry, the same one that once watched fences and fires through the dark, quietly refuses to stand down.